Okay, greetings and welcome to another Grenfell MediaWatch update. This edition is called 34 Years, 4 Months, Our Time as Victims is Over. And, well, where do I start? Well, the media's making that association with Grenfell and criminality once again, nicknaming, well, some people the Grenfell Dozen and others the Grenfell Six. But of course, one of the first things I have to talk about is the 5th of November. And instead of some people reflecting on the burning of a guy, which I have always been opposed to, in celebration of 1605's gunpowder plot, some people, and I use that term peoples very loosely, some, I won't even say animals, decided that they were going to erect an effigy of Grenfell and decided to expose their racism, put in cardboard cutouts or paper cutouts of human beings, colour them brown because, of course, it had to be clear that they were targeting migrants in this new Brexit era that we live in, and started uttering some vile comments exposing their disgusting ideology. I guess one of the things that was also difficult to swallow is that one of the people involved in constructing this effigy was actually a teacher. And when you think there's actually somebody in a public school teaching young people who actually holds those values, it's quite terrifying. But perhaps almost as vile as the contents of the video itself. We're seeing an explosion of ugly comments actually underneath articles covering the story, where we're seeing certain members of the public really make comments that expose the same kind of racist ideology that the people who posted and constructed this disgusting effigy have in the first place. And what those people don't seem to understand is that the Grenfell community is actually working on their behalf. If they think that the Grenfell community are somehow milking the government for compensation or whatever the stupid arguments I'm reading is, well, they've got it wrong. I mean, consider Bellway. They're going to pay £6 million to remove the cladding from their buildings. Now, would they have done this without a fight? The government is still not committed to actually spending the £1 billion required to actually make people in high-rise buildings safe. So when people are condemning the Grenfell community in this kind of sick way, they're actually just shooting themselves in the foot. Now, the recent articles on the BBC and Times website questioning whether being offensive is actually a crime are very unhelpful. Being an idiot in your own home is not an arrestable offence, and it shouldn't be. But the moment you actually record it, that demonstrates an intent to actually show it again. Well, that's what it does to me, because it wasn't just kept on someone's personal phone. It wasn't just kept in a private WhatsApp account. Somehow, someone within that private group put it onto social media. And as far as I'm concerned, they crossed the line. Now, amazingly, we live in this incredible time where we have organisations like Sky News actually having the cheek to question whether such an offensive video is actually emotionally distressful. And I say that by they place the word hurt in quote marks as if somehow it's just kind of some kind of prank that's got out of hand. Well, no, it's a hell of a lot more than that. Meanwhile, the inquiry continues, and we're having to hear horrific tales of survivors having to climb over and step over dead bodies to find their way to safety. We're hearing about parents making a decision to actually close curtains so their children can't see people jumping out of windows to their deaths. This is the reality of Grenfell, not some idiot burning, or I say idiot, a bunch of idiots burning an effigy and thinking that this is some kind of game, this is some kind of joke. In the meantime, there has been some other developments. We've heard about now a company called WSP who was paid £100,000 by the government to actually do some investigation into the cladding. But stuck inside was a gagging clause, basically meaning that they couldn't actually criticise the government or Theresa May in their report. And it's really interesting because, you know, you hear a lot about paedophiles and sexual abusers actually using gagging clauses to actually protect the powerful from scrutiny of the truth, and yet now we know that this government was doing exactly the same thing with Grenfell. And there are other developments, like Barry Quirk, the council's chief executive, actually making an apology. And it's great that he made an apology, but it's a really bizarre one, because on one hand he's saying sorry, on the other hand he's saying not sorry. So he's saying sorry for the fact that they ignored community concerns to actually double check the toxicity in the area, but they're also saying that actually We didn't check it again. We didn't take any concerns of the community because we have faith in science. But it's kind of like a backhand slap, because there's also this implication as if the community doesn't have any concerns about science, that they're actually just making up grievances. It's almost as though Public Health England and the council actually engaged in a smear campaign against Professor Steck, who actually raised this issue, trying to say that her findings, her investigation, are actually not scientific. But anyway, the government's actually made this announcement that it's going to be conducting its own test to keep everyone happy. The only thing they're saying is going to take them a few months to design a test that's actually robust enough to get to the truth. That's another one about kicking it into the long grass and hoping everyone forgets about the issues. Anyway, 67 out of the 203 families are still living in emergency accommodation or temporary housing. Some of the newspapers have reported this is something like 150. The London Fire Brigade has well, I think it's a fire brigade union actually, has announced that people now face a kind of lottery when it comes to their safety, because the government's actually cut fire and rescue services. Now, in closing, I want to say that I don't always explain the titles of these videos, but in this particular instance I want to make an exception. 34 years, 4 months, our time as victims is over. Well, our time as victims is over is quite simple. My favourite tune of the day right now, my theme tune, is Kamasi Washington's Fist of Fury. And that line comes from there. Because if I could use these fists to secure justice, there'd be a lot of fury all over this place right now. But at 34 years and 4 months, well, right now, 34 years and 4 months is the sum total of all the custodial sentences that's been passed over to Grenfell-related crimes. 34 years, 4 months, and yet none of the perpetrators, the fraudsters, what they call them, the Grenfell 12, that's where I got the figures from, I added them all up. They're in jail, and there's more jail time to come. But those responsible, not a single soul has actually faced justice. So I want to say, keep our eye on the ball. These clowns, the ones that they're nicknaming the Grenfell 6, I won't say the distractions, because what they did was so vile, it had to be addressed. But that's not the end game. So as usual, I'm going to close, and I want to say, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.